All right, we're going to begin our last unit of the year. It's over Oceania, which you can see there includes the countries of Australia, New Zealand, and Papua New Guinea, but it also includes small little islands in the Polynesian Islands, in the Micronesian Islands, and the Melanesian Islands. All right, so what is this part of the world most well known for? Clearly because they are a series of several islands. It's tourism. It's beaches, water, surf, sand, the whole 9 yards. But what's unique to this part of the world, and other parts, but this part has a large number of white sand beaches, which is made from coral that gets crushed up, or black sand beaches, which is made up from lava rock that's crushed up. You could go see a lot of waterfalls. So tourism, you might go see a lot of waterfalls because of the constant rain and the hot, humid climates. You could go here. Now this is where I went, Kampola Falls, and here was the little spiel to get us to go on it. It says, "This is an adventure of the real Hawaii. Travel through the historic plantation town of Kahola back to the valley of the Pololu Valley. View miles of glistening coastline with towering sea cliffs. Hike a hidden trail carved into sea cliffs, thousands of feet high. Many sights along the way include Kapola Falls, a breathtaking 500-foot waterfall." So you can travel to beaches, you could do waterfalls, you could see active volcanoes. As a matter of fact, this volcano is the most active volcano in the world. And right now, it's actually, I don't know if you'd say exploding, but it's definitely, these are pictures just from a few weeks ago, or a week ago, I guess, just showing the large amounts of lava that are spewing, and how destructive it can be. And there's the crater from the volcano that's on the big island of Hawaii that we're talking about here. And this kind of video is kind of unique to see a time lapse of how this lava, you can see it's starting to cool as it gets darker, but it's still pretty much eating up anything in its path. All right, so you can go see volcanic activities. You can take helicopter rides or plane rides over those. You can do typical things like snorkeling, with Australia having some of the best coral reefs in the world. You can definitely do that. So tourism is going to be the focus of our last project in this unit. All right, the map. In your packet, the map is kind of chaotic if you look at this. So I'm going to simplify it, and you can see the map in the packet that is really basic outline of Australia, New Zealand, and then the dotted outline of the three regions of Micronesia, Melanesia, and Polynesia. So that's really all you're going to need to know for specifically locating islands and countries in this region. So we'll label those as we go through. So you need some paper. We're going to take some notes about the big three countries, Australia, New Zealand, and Papua New Guinea. So Australia is known as a country that is unique and has a lot of things that could be falling into the Guinness Book of World Records. This is the only place in the world that can call itself a continent, an island, and an independent country. Now, independent, that's kind of relative. If you see the flag that's in the background, in the top left, you can see the British flag. Australia is actually a commonwealth of the United Kingdom. What does that mean? It sort of is still controlled by the UK. Now, if the United Kingdom had 5 strings that were connected to Australia, 4 have been cut, but there's this one just holding on. So it's as independent as it can possibly be, yet it still calls itself a commonwealth. The people of Australia have a nickname called the Aussies. The population is around 23 million people. The area is about 3 million square miles. And of course, they speak English because of that British connection. And in your packet, there's a fun little thing you can do talking about the slang of Australia. You could do that just for fun to see what phrases you actually know what they mean or what you can guess correctly. And the literacy rate is 99%, which tells you that it's pretty good. Now, life expectancy, it's a little bit better actually, I think, than the United States at 79.8 for men and 84.8 for females. Now, you don't have to write this down, but let's do a comparison with the United States. Australia has about 23 million people. We have about 234 million. So we have a lot more people. However, area we're relative. They have about 3 million square miles and we have about 3.8 million square miles. Literacy rate is the same. Of course, we speak English. And again, Aussies actually live a little bit longer than we do. The land is very diverse, but most of Australia is mountains. 40% of the country is desert, and they do have a little farmland, but it's much different than our farmland here. Only about 6% of that 3 million square miles is actually farmable land or arable. Most of the farming is animal farming, not necessarily crop farming. They do grow some crops, and we'll talk about that, but not a lot. The climate, well, Australia is located in the southern hemisphere. So what does that mean? Our seasons are opposite of theirs. Winter here is summer there. Spring there is fall here, etc., etc. And because they're closer to the equator, they have warmer average temperatures in between 84 degrees and 56 degrees pretty much year round. And when you look back at the land, a lot of it is desert, so it makes sense that it's much warmer. Plants and animals. Australia has, again, a lot of unique plants, unique animals that actually make the Guinness Book of World Records. The smallest kangaroo, the biggest kangaroo, the smallest marsupial, the largest marsupial. It has a lot of different animals like kangaroos. Only place in the world you can find that. Koalas, dingoes, platypuses, Tasmanian devils, wombats, frilled lizards, and the eucalyptus plant. So I'm going to show you some of those pictures as we go through. Platypus, it's kind of a duck beaver combination, and it kind of looks cute and harmless, but it actually has poisonous stingers on its rear feet, very sharp claws. The dingo is kind of a coyote, a wild dog, a fox looking thing, and those kind of are similar to like the deer population here in Iowa, where it kind of gets overrun and they overpopulate. Same thing with the dingoes. And because sheep are a huge animal that they raise in Australia, the sheep tend to get attacked a lot by the dingoes. So they sometimes are fair game to shoot in the wild and in and around the farms. The wombat kind of looks cute in the one picture, but then when it kind of gets angry, it shows its ugly little face. It's not found all over Australia, typically in the states of Tasmania, which is an island state, and the big state of Queensland. The emu, a lot like an ostrich, it's a flightless bird. It doesn't fly, but it's classified as a bird. They also use the emu eggs. The frilled lizard probably got its claim to fame in Jurassic Park. It's a lizard. It has the frill only for protection, a lot like a cobra. The Tasmanian devil, again, got its claim to fame from the cartoon Taz. It doesn't spin in circles, but it's primarily found in Tasmania. And I don't know, it kind of looks like a wolverine, maybe a little badger, something along those lines. Kangaroos. There are over 120 different species of marsupials in Australia, and there are over 500 species of eucalyptus trees and plants in Australia. Koalas, obviously, people think that they're cute and cuddly, but they are very aggressive animals, and their primary food source are those eucalyptus trees. All right, history. Just like French Guiana in our last unit, Australia was colonized as a prison colony. So the first settlers in Australia were prisoners, soldiers, and government officials, and that was established in 1788. The Aborigines are the native Australianers, and they are a very small percent of that people today, very similar to Native Americans in the United States, where Europeans came in and took over the land and forced them to reservations, um, killed them and attacked them for their land. That's why there's only a small percent of population today. And in 1770, Australia was actually discovered by an English explorer by the name of Captain James Cook. And the federal capital of Australia is Canberra. All right, so we will get started and we're going to talk about all the different states and territories of Australia. The first one is New South Wales. It is a state. Its capital is Sydney, and it was the first area to be colonized or settled. It produces half of Australia's wool, and Australia is one of the world's leading producers of wool. And the major cities are Newcastle and Canberra. Now on your map, label New South Wales. You do not need to label Sydney, the capital, or those cities I mentioned, but you can see that the red cities are larger than the black cities, and of course the star is the capital. The next one is the state of Victoria, named after Queen Victoria of England because it was colonized by England. Its capital is Melbourne. I would say Sydney and Melbourne are two cities you've probably heard of. It is the smallest state on the mainland, so it should be easy to identify on the map. It is the most densely populated state or territory in Australia, most people per square mile. And other major cities besides Melbourne are Geelong and Bendigo. So label Victoria, it is south of New South Wales. New South Wales was called that because it was the new region that is in the southern hemisphere, named after Wales, England. So both of these states or territories are named after things in England or Wales. The next one is Tasmania. It is an island state. Its capital is Hobart. It is very touristy because it is not like the rest of Australia. It's very green. It's much cooler, rainier. It reminds people a lot of England, not only in its climate and greenery, but in its culture, its architecture, the cobblestone streets. So people feel like they're at home if they are in Tasmania versus England. Other cities besides Hobart is Launceston. All right, so label Tasmania. It's the island south of Victoria. Again, you don't need to know where Hobart is, but most of the major cities or capitals are on the coast, as in most other parts of the world. All right, the next one is South Australia. It's a state. Its capital is Adelaide. It's known for its shipbuilding and also submarine construction. It produces wool, wheat, and wine. So as far as agriculture, they raise a lot of sheep here, but they do plant wheat and grapes. The other cities besides Adelaide are Woomera and Whyalla. So South Australia should be very easy to identify because it's in the southern part of Australia. Western Australia is also called the Western Third. It is a state. Its capital is Perth, and it is the largest state. It's the western 1/3 of the island or country. It produces over 100 trillion tons of iron, so it has a lot of iron ore reservoirs. And in the north of Western Australia is those reservations that I mentioned about the English or the British forced the Aborigines onto reservations, very similar to what we did in the United States. And most of the Aborigine population still lives on those reservations today. Cities other than Perth, Broome and Coolyanabing. There are some great city names in Australia. So the Western Third or Western Australia, lots of cities. You can see lots of red cities, which means they're higher in populations. But once again, they're on the coast because in the middle of Australia is primarily deserts. You can see the Great Sandy Desert, the Gibson Desert, and the Great Victoria Desert. All right, the Northern Territory. It's a territory because it does not have an independent government or a state capital. It's run by the federal government in Canberra. The capital is Darwin, but again, it's not really a capital where the government takes place because that's all done in the federal capital of Australia in Canberra. It's named after Charles Darwin, who did a lot of things